these drills he devised of load, aim, and shoot, load, aim, and shoot, load, aim, and shoot, without having a human being cognitive thought or any kind of compassion come forth about the damage you were doing when you shot and killed something, torture and damage. But it was just sort of a robotic-like response that he was drilling and training in to these commanders and soldiers. He was this Amsterdam commander. His great-nephew eventually established, coincidentally, the Bank of England, out of which a lot of these international banking concerns come forth. Subsequent to that, the first major corporations in the United States were the railroad corporations. And they were peopled by, in the managerial positions, by the U.S. U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers was this, of course, military establishment that went in and put forth this managerial technique and emplaced it into corporate capitalism, initially through the railroads, which was the first major corporation, and thereafter spread it about throughout most of the industries. And that was done by a man named Frederick Winslow. His name escapes me for the minute. Frederick Winslow Taylor. I'm sorry, Frederick Winslow Taylor, who was the essentially at the end of the 19th century. He was the developer of something called scientific management. He was the one that devised how to take these militaristic operations, these mindless kind of routinized scenarios for human beings where they had no cognitive thought or creative process, and reinvest them in the assembly line, in the labor force. And out of that came this kind of routinized labor force that only the top echelon was allowed to think a cognitive thought. And the labor force itself was supposed to be this efficient, machine-like robotization of humanity. And that sort of has pervaded the issue throughout the labor force. Now this concept of this hierarchical strata, this militarist hierarchical strata, with you have a few plutocratic elites who are allowed to design, think, and motivate and make decisions, and sort of this robotized labor force at the bottom. And that's kind of pretty much where we are today. And in the next sermon in regards to this, I'll talk a little bit more about how this is specifically done in the financial services industry and the big banking industry at large. I will say, just as a segue into that, or as an introduction to that to a large extent, Native Americans have been in a financial crisis and have been pretty much disenfranchised since the inception of the country. They were pretty much declared as wildlife and non-human, and their properties were confiscated from them. Now that definition of non-human is just being enlarged to a greater and greater extent in the population, into the labor force, and their rights and civil rights are being confiscated, and they're being shuttled into that same definition of non-human. It's sort of like welcome to a reservation or welcome to the FEMA camp. It's kind of the same thing, you know. So it's the settlers who kind of turned a blind eye and were actually participatory in exterminating Native Americans and confiscating their property. That position now is being filled by the financial services industry, who are confiscating the property of the labor force, and they think they're insulated, and they're turning a blind eye. In the same way the settlers in the 18th and 19th century did to Native Americans. But what they don't realize is they're not immune to this either. Eventually they're going to come for them too, and they're going to come for them very soon, because this train is picking up steam. And like Howard Zinn says, you cannot be neutral on a moving train. I'm going to close a little prayer, a little prayer song. These are sacred eagle feathers on this drum, and they carry my prayers by virtue of the spirit of the eagle to the heavens. up.